ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीं यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै. So yesterday we were discussing the goals of life, etc. And goal of life now we have understood is to know oneself. One has a self-ignorance and a certain conclusions, wrong conclusions regarding the self due to self-ignorance. So this is a issue. And when we also discussed, there are three types of obstacles because of which one is not able to really appreciate what one is. And that is called malam, vikshepaha and avaranam. So malam means impurities in the mind, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, etc. So in general we call raga dveshas. The second is a mind all the time wavers, restless. And the third is basically ignorance. So these are the three things. And then in order to take care of all these three obstacles, there are three yogas, spiritual disciplines also we discussed. One is called karma yoga, which definitely takes care of the raga, dvesha, etc. The second one is upasana, meditations. Definitely give you a focusing capacity, abiding capacity. Mind should have an abiding capacity. Then it automatically abides in the self. So that is given by this upasana. And so that's how they call yoga, because it connects you ultimately to yourself, true self, indirectly or directly. And the third one is a ignorance, which will the third obstacle, which will be taken care of by this knowledge, jnanam, etc., self-knowledge. And so this then ultimately one is able to appreciate what one is, and there's a free self. So you understand you are a free self, timeless self, and there is no question of insecurity centered on I. Therefore, I am insecure, that conclusion will go away. While I am lacking something, I am limited, I am very limited being, And then the issue of a self non-acceptance, etc., also will go away when you see yourself a limitless consciousness. And therefore, and that is called fullness. That limitlessness alone expresses as a fullness in a moment of joy. In a moment of joy, there is fullness. There is no a sense of a lack centered on I. And so, well, one appreciates oneself as a full self. And therefore, the issue that, well, I am a displeased self, I am a limited self, that also will go away. So this is, and because of that, well, other pursuits, arthakama, etc., loses importance in one's life. Still, one can have arthakama pursuits. One need not stop totally. Well, but you're not compelled to have these pursuits. Yeah, that's a freedom when you are not compelled. At the same time, if you are pursuing also, well, you are free to pursue. You are free not to pursue. That's a freedom. That's a freedom one gains. And to take care of these obstacles, as I said, karma yoga, etc., upasana and jnanam, etc., well, they are described in the Shastra, in the Veda. But one can't study Veda. They are inaccessible, frankly speaking. And even if they are there, well, one cannot decipher. It's in the language, well, which is very difficult. So anyway, so basically, the Bhagavad Gita is a solution for us because it's an essence of the entire Veda, and which has all the three spiritual disciplines we call Karma Yoga also is described. Upasanam, etc. is there between chapter 7 to 12. Bhagavan describes so many glories. Those glories are meant just for visualization, for meditation, etc. So, and that is there. And Jnanam, of course, is there, second chapter onwards and everywhere in 15th chapter, 13th chapter. So, for all the three spiritual disciplines, which can take care of these three obstacles and which can lead me to moksha, are there in Bhagavad Gita, just in 700 verses. And therefore, well, one has to study Bhagavad Gita at least. As such, in a Vedanta study, there are three stages, they say. This is just by the way. First stage is studying Bhagavad Gita along with certain Prakarana Granthas. That's the first step. And what kind of Prakarana Granthas? Like Tattvabodha and, Atma Bodha, Vivek, Chudamani, etc. Then the second stage is studying Upanishad along with the Prakarana Granthas, some other Prakarana Granthas. And the third stage is studying Brahma Sutra along with Prakarana Granthas. Prakarana Granthas basically, they help you to get clarity regarding the subject matter described in Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, etc. And therefore, Prakarana Granthas themselves cannot give you this Atma Jnanam, but they can help you basically in order to gain Atma Jnanam through Upanishads, etc. So these are the three stages generally they talk about. Everywhere you have to take a support of some text written by other acharyas, including even Adi Shankaracharya ji also has written several texts, and other acharyas, Vedantic acharyas who have come in tradition also have written some text. Anyway, but we are right now focusing on Bhagavad Gita, and now I have to enter into this. In this Bhagavad Gita, well, chapter 1 happens to be the introduction to this teaching of Bhagavad Gita, and it is in the form of a dialogue between, Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And the real teaching, of course, the dialogue actually begins in the second chapter from verse number 11 onwards. So from second chapter, 11th verse, the actual Gita teaching begins, and that is why Shankaracharya ji writes commentary basically on the Gita from the verse number 11. But this is an introduction. This chapter 1 is an introduction and is equally important. And it lays this foundation for the Gita dialogue or this teaching to take place. And this introductory chapter has two purposes. We will be discussing this in this class. Very important. This introductory chapter, chapter 1, serves two purposes. The first purpose, that it presents a basic human problem which we discussed yesterday, and Shastra calls that basic human problem, fundamental human problem, disowning of oneself, not knowing oneself, and also have an misapprehension about ourselves that, well, I am a limited being, etc., is a basic human problem. Well, and that is called samsara in the Shastra. Samsara is described in a various ways, I will tell you. So it's a universal human problem, basically. One is born ignorant. Born ignorant of the world, also born ignorant of oneself. And so this is a basic human problem known as a samsara. And it is universal human problem irrespective of nationality, irrespective of religion, caste, irrespective of education, irrespective of your health, wealth, irrespective of a sex, irrespective of the age, well, or irrespective of the stage of the life, ashrama. So basically, this is a universal human problem, and it does not belong to a particular time or a history, etc. Also, this problem was there along with the Arjuna. We will be discussing, and this problem is there with all of us, and this problem will be there in the future also after 10,000 years if human being is going to survive. I mean, so this has no bearing in a particular time also. Anyway, and the first purpose of this chapter, first chapter, is a presentation of this disease, samsara roga. And the question here arises is, why should Vyasacharya ji describe this disease, samsara, etc., in this chapter? Well, answer is because entire Gita Shastra happens to be the solution, the remedy for that disease. So while the other 17 chapters, especially from 11th verse of 2nd chapter up to the 18th chapter end, is basically a remedy for this disease. And therefore first one should know what is a disease. Then accordingly one can find a remedy. And therefore, well, Vyasacharya ji presents this particular disease we call samsara, etc., the fundamental human problem in chapter 1. And the solution, this disease is called samsara, and the solution is called Moksha Shastra. Basically, the 17th chapter is called Moksha Shastra. So, unless we know the disease, we cannot appreciate the importance and relevance of remedy, and therefore that is essential. So that is the first purpose. Description of a disease is the first purpose. And that is why this chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Vishada means the samsara, disease, which Arjuna also had. Then the second purpose of this chapter is a introduction of a Guru and Shishya. So whose dialogue is going to be presented as a Gita teaching, etc. Therefore both of them have been introduced in the chapter 1. Krishna, Lord Krishna and Arjuna both have been introduced here. Anyway, now let us, these two main topics in this introductory chapter, let us discuss little in detail. First is a description of a disease. That is, we'll discuss in a little elaborately. So description of this human problem can be presented in a different ways. Like, even our disease in a physical body can be described in a different way. Like allopathy system describes a certain disease in one way. The same disease when Ayurveda people, Ayurveda physicians, when they look upon that, they describe it in a little different way. And homeopathy people will still describe it in a third way. It's a one disease, but you can see from a different angle. So same way, the scripture also presents this universal problem. It presents in a different format and in a different context. And so in this chapter 1, Vyasacharya ji presents basically in a particular fashion. So like samsara, we generally know samsara means samyak sarati. One basically slides from one birth to the second, another birth to the another birth to the another birth. We call Janma Marana cycle, birth and death cycle. That is also one way of description. Then samsara can be presented as a self non-acceptance. Samsara can be presented as a fear in one's life, a fear of any kind. Samsara can be presented as a rejection of oneself. So samsara can be presented as a sorrow. So all varieties of the ways one describes. Samsara can be presented as an attachment. Samsara can be presented as a delusion. So that is how one thing, basically the fundamental human problem of not knowing oneself, well, is presented in a different context differently. So here in this context of Bhagavad Gita, this particular same disease is presented in a one particular fashion. And is presented as a syndrome basically. It's a, like a, it's a mixture of three diseases, they call it. And what is that? Well, this call it as a attachment plus sorrow plus delusion. So that is what Arjuna stands for. Arjuna had this issue. Anyway, so this is the way it has been presented here. And in that, the first one is a attachment, well, whose significance must be clearly grasped. Throughout Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan basically, criticizes this attachment. So, what is this attachment? Well, it is called emotional dependence. This will be there. But what is the connection between self-ignorance and emotional dependence? Well, if you don't know yourself, in reality that you really don't lack security, or you don't lack basically a fulfillment, you are a fulfilled person. Our self is basically a full. But if you don't know it, well, definitely you seek outside the security and joy or pleasure, etc., outside. And wherever you seek, and you find that this is going to fulfill that promise of giving me security, etc., well, you automatically become dependent on that. So attachment arises when you look upon any situation, any person, any object as a source of security or source of pleasure. So that is definitely is going to arise. The first thing which arises from this self-ignorance is this raga. We described as a malam yesterday. We described it as a kamaha, krodha, lobha, etc. And I said raga, dvesha, etc. So this is a raga. And when we discuss this raga, attachment, etc., it should be clearly differentiated from a love, which is very, very similar emotion. Attachment and love looks very similar emotion, but there is a big difference. How can you say, Swami, there is a big difference? Because love is basically appreciated very well, glorified in the Shastra, and attachment is something which is criticized in the Shastra. Therefore, there must be some difference in that. There is a difference. Yeah. So we'll see that. In fact, love is glorified in Bhagavad Gita itself, and attachment is basically criticized in Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, they say that love is a trait of a jnani. He has a love for every being, and this attachment is a trait for a samsari, a jnani. So therefore, this is how it has been described here. And what is the difference between that? Well, first thing is that this attachment is based on a selfishness, naturally, because you are dependent for your security or for your pleasure. Therefore, definitely there is a selfishness. You want to derive in that relationship, you want to derive that. So you are only interested in your well-being, even at the cost of others, right? And therefore, this is it is based on a selfishness, and I'm emotionally hooked basically, or dependent on or holding to a person based on selfishness. What do I get? What do I get out of this relationship? That's it. When I think like this, if you break the relationship, there is no attachment. But if you continue with the relationship and you want to continue with that relationship, means you are deriving some benefit and you are interested only in that benefit. That's called attachment towards that person. That's it. That's called attachment. You won't bother what other person gets out of this relationship. You are interested in your well-being only. So anyway, this is selfish dependence, we can say, is this attachment. Whereas in love, is a totally a different type of relationship where I am not going to emphasize very much on what I am going to get. I am only interested in the well-being of others in the relationship. What other person will get out of this relationship, how the other person gets maximum benefit out of this relationship, you are interested in that. Then that is called love. This is basically a selfless motive behind that. So this is a first difference. And then definitely the corollary of this will be that attachment, well, is always in the form of a taking. And I hold on to the things, situations, people for taking something. Whereas love is something which is based on giving. So that's the difference. Third is attachment is always conditional. Yeah. So long as the other person or object fulfills the condition of giving me security or joy, making me comfortable, I am interested. Moment it makes me discomfortable, I'm not interested. So attachment is always conditional, whereas love is unconditional. Unconditional acceptance of the others. So anyway, so there, there is total acceptance. I think yesterday I told you also, it's a total acceptance of a person. Fourth is this attachment generally is born of a weak mind, because you are dependent emotion. That shows you are having a weak mind, which is an empty mind, you can say, which has no self-sufficiency, etc., which is not happy by itself. So that is how it becomes dependent on external factor for satisfaction. Whereas love is born of strength and fullness. That is how so that because you are not dependent, yet you are all the time making others comfortable, well, definitely, well, then you basically have a certain strength or fullness, self-sufficiency with you. So this is the fourth one. And the fifth is, well, in attachment, intellect is generally covered, right? And so it leads to a violation of dharma. And in a love, a person's intellect is basically sane and clear. So, well, he doesn't violate dharma. So these are the differences between attachment and love. And so attachment is definitely is a sign of a bondage. And definitely if you want a freedom, moksha in your life, well, this is the obstacle. This is the obstacle. That is how it is a part of this disease. The very first thing is an attachment. Love is a sign of a freedom, well, basically. Anyway, so this is presented as a basic disease of a samsara. Then definitely this attachment will lead to something. Invariably. Will lead to what? It will lead to sorrow. Attachment invariably leads to sorrow, without fail. So attachment, why? Because I have been emotionally depending upon some external factor, and when that external factor, well, definitely is constantly changing. In fact, sometimes it goes away also from your life, right? Even if it doesn't go away permanently, but it goes away even temporarily from you. And then definitely that's going to happen, of course. And therefore, the person will, since he or she is dependent upon that person or a situation, well, and that person goes away, well, you are going to fall. And therefore, well, person falls down. They give an example. One Acharya gives example that there are two people. You know, the morning people take a walk. There are two people. Both are old, but one is a little healthy person, but the other is a not so healthy. What happens is, well, the other person, the one old person who is not healthy, he keeps a stick. Well, because he needs a stick. Sometimes he may fall down suddenly. In old age, this issue is a very big issue. Person suddenly falls down. He loses balance. And so he keeps a stick. The other person also is old, but he is quite healthy. Still, he also keeps a stick. But that is he keeps a stick called baton, you know. They keep it for a style. Some people keep it for a style. They do like this and go. They don't need to take a support. Well, this is how it is. So basically, one would take support using a stick, etc. Well, if stick falls, the person also falls down. So this emotional dependence is like this kind of a stick, basically. Anyway, so the attachment is basically this emotional crutch, we can say, which will make me psychologically flat, frustrated, etc., disappointed, sometimes even shocked, because he has no idea, she has no idea that the person would go away like this, and it happens. The person gets shocked, right? So this is the result of an attachment, is always a sorrow. Sorrow is a result. Anyway, and unfortunately, whether the object I depend upon, well, psychologically, or a person, etc., is unfortunate, it is impermanent. And therefore, I mean, it may be a possession, it may be a person, it may be a property, it may be a position, it may be a physical body, anything. Well, if you are leaning on that, well, definitely it will make you cry one day, that's for sure. So, emotional dependence, psychological dependence is called selfish dependence, is called ragaha, attachment, which results into sorrow. And therefore, we should always prepare ourselves, because we know that this is going to happen, not today, tomorrow. They give an example that generally person prepares oneself for old age, economically, So when you are still not retired, well, you prepare yourself, because in old age you are not going to earn and you need money. And therefore you prepare yourself economically, investing somewhere and etc., all this. But for psychological dependence and a subsequent loss in the future of a person, of a thing, what preparation you have done in your life? They ask like this. While generally nobody prepares, They think that as the situation will come, we'll deal with it. But that situation becomes very difficult to handle. Anyway, therefore, basically Bhagavad Gita says that preparation, well, it cannot be done when when a problem arises. The preparation has to be done earlier. Like for the old age, preparation has to be done not in old age, but before. Same way. So that is how Bhartrhari says very beautifully in Vairagya Shatakam. Yavat swasthamidam sharira marujam, yavat jara duratah, yavat chendriya shaktira pratihata, yavat kshayona ayushah, atmashreyasi tavadeva vidusha karyah prayatno mahan, sandipte bhavanetu kupa khananam pratyudyamah kidrishah. So beautifully. Yavat swasthamidam sharira marujam. Well, as long as the body is free from this disease and decrepitude, well, as long as the old age is far off, as long as the powers of the senses, etc., are unaffected, and well, life is not decaying, so long this discriminative people should put forth a lot of efforts for the sake of Atmashreyasi, for the sake of one's own well-being. Because when the house is on fire, there is no point in digging the well. That's what it says. Anyway, so if we try to solve the problem when the tragedy struck, well, that is not going to help. So one has to have a far-sightedness. So wherever our emotional dependence are, we should know that one day that thing will go away, or either I will go away. That is going to happen. That's not going to be there all the time. So this is a second. In a samsara disease, first is a raga, which is of course born of, as I told you, emotional dependence, born of ultimately not appreciating who you are. Self-ignorance leads to this, well, and which leads to sorrow. And once your mind is overpowered by sorrow, well, you can't think. Your intellect basically is not able to discern anything. And a right thing appears wrong, and a wrong thing appears right. That's what happens. We call delusion also sometimes. So our decisions in such a situation, when the mind is sorrowful, our decisions will be generally wrong decisions. Therefore, they always say, when we are in a very much sorrow, we take help of others. for advice, etc. And otherwise, in the same matter, we have advised others when we were not sorrowful. Now, in the same situation arises in our life, well, then you should be able to advise yourself and take proper decisions, but you are not able. You need another, your friend or somebody else. They should decide for you because you are not able to decide. So this is what happens. So the third thing arises. Attachment leads to sorrow, and sorrow in the mind, of course, leads to delusion. The intellect is veiled, actually. Intellect should have a capacity of discriminating, discerning, etc. But, well, it doesn't have that capacity at that time. And intellect has to decide. And generally, in such a state, the decisions are wrong decisions. Right appears wrong, wrong appears right. All this is applied to Arjuna. So this delusion is called moha. So this is here, which we described in this context, is ragaha, shokaha, moha. Attachment, sorrow and delusion. Born of what? Self-ignorance, not appreciating who am I. And this becomes actually a vicious cycle. Once my intellect is clouded, my actions will be wrong, and because of that, the situation will be worse. Because if my action is wrong, then the situation will definitely, will be creating more problems for me. So wrong decision leads to external situation also become worsened, and you are not able to face that. So you get sorrow, right? And in such situation, your mind becomes so weak, then you become more and more emotionally dependent. So raga also increases. So therefore, this is a vicious cycle. Raga leads to shoka, shoka leads to moha. Because of moha, well, there is a wrong decisions. Wrong decisions leads to inviting problems in life, leads to shoka. And in shoka moha situation, well, they are there. Well, your attachment for varieties of other things also increase. Emotional dependence basically increases. So this is all a vicious cycle. One cannot come out of this cycle. And this is they describe like this. So instead of basically, working for freedom, well, this person will be basically changing from one dependence to other dependence. Like, we have, some people have a habit of smoking. So they say, no, smoking is injurious to health. So they give up smoking and start taking the snuff like that. So basically, you are not making yourself free from such a dirty habit. Well, you basically switch over from one thing to the other thing. Your dependence continues. This is the situation. That's how a samsari, or the person who is ignorant of oneself, he is basically remain as a dependent person throughout the life. So this is the situation. Anyway, so presenting this particular disease, samsara, is the first purpose of this chapter 1. And then later 17 chapters course is giving you the solution, remedy, that how to come out of this vicious cycle. So that I get freedom, I get independence, I get moksha. Because the basic cause is self-ignorance, right? And therefore one has to, jnanam alone is the remedy for that. Well, once you know that, you don't need a security, or you don't basically need a fulfillment from others. You are basically not a displeased self, you are a full self, and you are a timeless consciousness, etc. Well, and in that case, you won't be dependent upon others emotionally for security and happiness, etc. So that is the only solution. There is no other solution for this, and that is the solution given in the 17 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, from chapter 2 onwards, 11th verse onwards, which is called Moksha Shastra, which is a remedy for this. So this is the first purpose of introducing chapter 1. And then the second purpose is to introduce, as I told you, a teacher and disciple, Guru Shishya, because all the spiritual teachings, either in Bhagavad Gita or in even Upanishads, on general the scriptures, are in the form of dialogues. And a very healthy thing. Dialogue means a student asks a question and Teacher answers. And again, the student asks further questions, etc., in order to resolve a certain doubt, etc. So that dialogue is the method by which one gains a knowledge free from all the doubts. Therefore, all our teaching is in the form of dialogues. Dialogue naturally is between a teacher and student. So, which we call it as a samvadaha. Vadaha is between two equals, right? Two friends or two, like that. So, that is a vadaha. But the samvada is between a teacher and a student, and generally student asks a question and teacher answers, etc. So, here also the Bhagavad Gita is in the form of a dialogue. The teaching has been given to Arjuna, right, by Krishna. Therefore, chapter 1 has to introduce both, teacher and student, both. And therefore, that's the second purpose of chapter 1, is to introduce Guru and Shishya, Krishna and Arjuna, both. And that also reveals that in order to solve this issue, in order to get rid of this disease, one should not do self-medication. Yeah, generally people do self-medication. A headache occurs, people just take medicine. I heard, maybe right, maybe wrong, but I heard that there are 2,000 causes for a headache to occur. The eyes can be a cause, the ears can be a cause, or even something else. The stomach can be a cause for the headache. Anything can be a cause for the headache, or even a neighbor can be a cause for the headache. But anyway, so point is there are thousands of reasons for a headache to occur. But whenever headache occurs, you take without consultation a tablet or a medication yourself. Some people, this is just a simple thing, but some people take for anything, they take medication on their own. Well, that's not correct. For such a disease, medication is there, but then medication is through consultation with the teacher. So that the dialogue presents this thing also. Yeah, dialogue presents that, in order to get rid of this disease, one should go to the teacher. So, Shrutriyam Brahmanishtam Samit Panihi, etc. Tad Vijnanartham Sa Gurumeva Bhi Gachet. Shrutriyam Brahmanishtam Samit Panihi. Mundaka Upanishad also very beautifully said. Tad Vijnanartham Gurum Eva Bhi Gachet. Eva stands for emphasis. One must go to the teacher. So dialogue represents this thing also, that in order to get rid of this disease, Arjuna also surrendered to Lord Krishna, and then Bhagavan gave this teaching to him as a medication. So anyway, and here of course Lord Krishna is a teacher and Arjuna is a student. And context also is presented here in chapter 1. And context, of course, but we have to finish that formality. What is the context? Pandavas and Kauravas, both of them, both the armies joined together and they are about to fight. This war, Arjuna felt that he wants to supervise the opposite army, opposite side. So he requested Bhagavan to bring the chariot in front of the opposite side. And then he basically surveyed the people, and what he saw in front, if it is Duryodhana, he would immediately kill him, but no. Bhagavan deliberately placed it in front of Bhishma and Drona. And with Bhishma and Drona, Arjuna had this problem of attachment, definitely. So how do you know whether for Bhishma and Drona, Arjuna had attachment or a love? How will you know? How will you know? Because somebody told me, Bhishma is, in whose lap he is brought up, and Drona is a guru. So therefore, you should not say attachment. You should say love for the guru. No, it's an attachment. Why? Because it is as he saw them, his thinking was clouded. He came here to fight the war, and he was calling it as to win over this adharma, etc. For 13 years he waited for this war, ultimately to take care of these people, Duryodhana and company. But when he entered into the war, definitely this dharma yuddha, etc. has gone. Instead he was saying this is adharma yuddha. When he is going to kill all this, it is adharma, etc. We know all this thing. And therefore, his thinking has literally changed. What was right, now it appears to him as a wrong. Definitely, moha, delusion has arisen. Definitely, it has been born from attachment. And therefore, that is, and Bhagavan, of course, takes care of. I mean, he basically, Bhagavan attacks on this attachment issue in the very second chapter itself. We'll see that. So, so this is definitely an attachment, it's not a love. And not only that, other things are also there. Having decided to fight, well, Kshatriya would not run away from the battle. At least, Kshatriya would not run away. He wanted to run away from the battle. That's not good. Third thing is, he is a Grihastha and he sustains his family. And definitely, in such a situation, he could not talk about sannyasa, and leaving aside everything, and he wanted to run away, going away from the responsibilities, etc. This all shows a wrong decisions appearing on his mind. Definitely has a basis in attachment, not in a love, etc. So this is very clear. I mean that, and also Arjuna himself confessed that he's confused regarding dharma, etc. In a second chapter, he says that karpanya dosho pahatas svabhah pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda chetah. Chetah means chetas means mind. Dharma sammuda. Well, with O Lord, with respect to this dharma, etc., what is right, what is wrong, etc., my mind is totally confused. Therefore, definitely it has a basis in attachment only, not in this is a love. So anyway, so this is the situation, and this kind of a situation we also face in our life. That we generally, we take a right decisions when for the people, when we have to decide for the others who are not related to me. Yeah, like suppose I am a head of the company, and somebody did something wrong in a company, in a certain manufacturing thing, and it has literally made a big loss. Then the whole thing came to me, and I immediately started showing the law and said, well, this person should be removed, he should be fined, this, etc. You said also, without knowing who is the person. But then the person who has come with the complaint says, sir, he is your brother-in-law. That's it. Now, all this dharma, etc. goes away. You will try to find some ways in order to save the person. So this shows that whenever there is an attachment with respect to dharma, etc., right, wrong, etc., we definitely get deluded. Also, sorrow also arises. That's a byproduct. Anyway, and that is how even the best doctors also sometimes they are not able to perform the surgery on their own son. Because a doctor is not performing a surgery, a father is performing a surgery. There is an attachment. So he is not able to do a right thing. Otherwise, he is a very expert, a very good surgeon. But so then he need not call someone else. But generally, he will call someone else to perform the surgery. This all shows a moha, delusion. Anyway, so we find in this chapter when that Arjuna goes through the problem of attachment towards Bhishma and Drona, that leads to sorrow, definitely, and that leads to delusion, moha. And Arjuna finds himself helpless. That's how at the end of the chapter 1 you find Arjuna just sat down in the chariot, leaving aside his bow and arrow, etc. So the moment he discovers this helplessness, he surrendered to Lord. And we know very well, Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapannayam, etc. That's a great thing that Bhagavan was there and he surrendered there, was having the medicine for this in order to, get rid of this disease of Arjuna. So Vaidya Narayano Harihi. They say Vaidya Narayana, basically. So anyway, and what is the qualification of student is this, that you discover basically this human problem. If you discover a basic issue, you are qualified. If you don't discover this, the fundamental problem, that this is a problem of a self-ignorance. If you don't discover, you are not qualified for this knowledge. If you discover that the basic issue is this, and I need a teaching basically from a teacher, etc., well, then you are qualified. And that's what happened in the case of Arjuna. So, if one does not discover the problem, well, one will not, will never know the relevance of this remedy also. So, this is a qualification of a student, that he discovers the problem, he also discovers the helplessness to solve the problem, and he surrenders to the teacher, here Lord. That's the qualification of a student. And what is the qualification of a teacher? Well, the teacher should be free from at least disease, or teacher should be in a process of taking medicine and getting rid of disease. Teacher also at that time, well, teacher also discovered that I'm also having this disease, let us both together try to find a remedy for this, that it is not going to work. And therefore the qualification of a guru is, he should be free from the disease, or he should be in the process of free from being a disease. So he should know the remedy. And well, that person is a guru. And well, we find here, Lord is definitely knows the remedy. And our Arjuna also is a qualified person. And therefore, since both are qualified and they came together, the conditions are ideal for the teaching to take place. And so, the teaching starts from chapter 2, verse 11 onwards. So this is the gist of chapter 1 up to verse, and chapter 2 up to verse 10. Now regarding teaching in general, from 11th verse onwards up to the 50th verse where we have to begin, I will give that in nutshell in the evening. And then we'll begin from verse 50 along with the Bhasyam. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.